What is going on, guys? It is Craig James here bringing you the next episode of the Masculine by Design Mancast. Today, we're going to be talking about a masculine mindset to leadership and entrepreneurship. My guest today is Shadeed Eleazer, and Shadeed is somebody who has grown up from the earliest stages of life being trained in what it is to be an entrepreneur, building a family business, leading in that sphere, and learning all that there is to being successful at leading in business and leading teams of people on a common mission that inspires, that brings value to their lives as well as the lives of those they are working to serve in the place of business. Now, before I welcome Shadeed to the Mancast today, I do want to remind every one of you listening that if you're not following me yet on social media, the best place to do that is on Twitter. You can find me at the handle Masculine Design. Also, if you are enjoying these podcasts, please take a moment or two of your time, go to iTunes, search for the Masculine by Design Mancast, and leave me a 5-star review. That is all that I ask of the value that I bring behind this microphone. And if you would do that, I'd be most appreciative of you for your, again, 1 or 2 minutes of your time to leave me that review. That is a great way to tell iTunes that what I'm doing here matters, that other people stand to gain value from listening to these podcasts. And there are plenty of men out there, as you well know, who could use the message of personal responsibility, positive masculinity, and self-leadership and leadership of the family. So again, the best way you can help me to get this message out, just go to iTunes, search for the Masculine by Design Mancast, and leave me a 5-star review. Thank you so much to all of you who have already left reviews, and thank you to all of you who are going to do that now. All right, let's get to the topic at hand today. So I mentioned earlier, my guest is Shadeed Eleazer. Shadeed is a brother in the Fraternity of Excellence. You can check that out, by the way, by going to fraternityofexcellence.com. Shadeed is a friend. He is a return guest to the Mancast. He came on here about a year ago, as I checked during our conversation today. And I just absolutely love the way that Shadeed issues a very logical, methodical, measured approach to the way that he attacks life, the way that he attacks business, and the number of insights that he drops in this podcast is unfathomable. I listened to this after we recorded, and I couldn't have been more pleased with the way this turned out and the value that Shadeed is about to drop on you. So I hope that you're ready to learn. I hope that you're ready to be humble enough to take notes, to take action on the things that you learn from a man who has decades of learning and experiencing what it is to be a man, what it is to be a leader in the home and the place of business, because what he is about to share with you can truly be transformative if you take it and use it to transform your life. So with that, join me in welcoming Shadeed Eleazer to the Masculine by Design Mancast. All right, Shadeed Eleazer, welcome back to the Mancast for round number 2. It's good to have you on here today. You were on here about a year ago, and from the download numbers, it was quite a popular episode. So a lot of our listeners who listen to this podcast episode will be familiar with you. But great to have you on here. You messaged me. You said you wanted to talk about something that I think would be a great topic for our listeners who get on this episode, to just talk about the masculine mindset that goes into a man leading, a man not just leading himself, but leading others. We talked before we started recording about how it's not nearly as difficult to be an alpha in the sense of leading yourself, living to your own standards. That's a lot easier to do than leading yourself, and then also living in a way that inspires and leads others to follow an example that is worthy for them to follow because it is of value to them. And so we're definitely going to dig into that today. But welcome back to the podcast, Shadeed. It's great to have you on here. Why don't you let our listeners know a little bit about kind of your background for those who don't know you, and why you felt this topic would be important for us to touch on this evening.
First of all, thank you for having me. It is an honor and a privilege to share the airwaves and create timeless dialogue for the listeners. Now, for those of you who may be new to my ideas or my work, from the time that my 10 toes touched down on planet Earth, I have been raised with the primary example of the do for self mentality. This means that grandma had a business. That means that uncles and aunts have businesses. And I was raised in a culture where family is the first business. I'll give you an example. If today I was to sit down at Thanksgiving and the discussion was that I got home improvements done by a contractor outside of Home Depot and Lowe's, where I have a first cousin who can build an entire house with his bare hands, there would be tension in the ranks at the dinner table. So all throughout life, family values were often intertwined with business. So my earliest example was about packaging knowledge, skills, and abilities, no matter if you're at a job, if you're an intern, but always packaging those experiences to build something on your own. So that mentality has taken me to the United States Navy, where the core values of honor, courage, and commitment are drilled into us. And the idea that people and relationships make the world go round. And so what I've done is, upon separation from the military, I embarked on building my own business. And within that business is also a service component. So I'm also the president of SCORE, which is the nation's largest network of business mentors, certified business mentors, and one of the pillars of entrepreneurship within the greater Maryland, greater Baltimore region, and youngest chapter chair in the United States of America. And so entrepreneurship, taking business ideas and building the model around them, is what I eat and breathe. And I believe that entrepreneurship is the bridge to empower lost and underfunded communities. And by helping citizens to have that power and that ownership, I believe it helps to improve communities as well. And that's my life's work and mission.
Yeah. So when you came on last time, Shadeed, we talked a lot about the link between entrepreneurship and the masculine mind, and how the two have a lot of inextricable links as far as what makes an entrepreneur successful, and how a man can unleash that masculine psychology to his benefit and to the benefit of his fellow man. Now, today, as we're recording this, we're in the middle of the coronavirus, COVID-19 pandemic, and there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of anxiety. Some men may be kicking themselves for the things they maybe didn't do coming into this that they wish they would have. And then there are also other men who I know, and I'm trying to be in this camp myself, who are taking advantage of opportunities, being at home a little bit more, having some more time at our disposal to do the things that we want to do. Because, to be frank, for me to be working at home, I would bet about 8 hours of my week at the office is spent just in idle chit chat, because, somebody stops by my office to talk about something, and, we get through the meat of that discussion in 2 or 3 minutes. And then we spend the next 10 minutes talking about whatever might come up, or whatever tangents we might go down. And so, can you talk a little bit about how this current environment that we're in, and particularly the environment of crises or uncertainty or anxiety, really just magnifies that importance of men being men, and whether that's in the family or in the place of business?
Great question. Now, if you miss the first conversation that we had on the broadcast, you have to understand that within society, men are essentially the structure, the island versus the waves, the lighthouse that the ships sail into. So when that relates to entrepreneurship, or the analogy between those qualities and that essence of what a man is in entrepreneurship, we are the builders of society. You are the builders, the architects of society. And when it comes to entrepreneurship, it is within you to be able to build and create. Obviously, with the school system and employment, we often veer off the path. But if you tap into that essence, then you'll be able to build those ideas that come to you when you're at work, that come to you during idle time when you wake up in the morning, or that keep you up at night. Now, when it comes to times of uncertainty, this is the time where, when chaos, when the waves are rocky, you must double down on being the island. Entrepreneurship in itself is being a problem solver. Entrepreneurship within itself is being solution oriented and looking around and saying, what are the gaps in which people have to complete certain tasks or certain objectives that they want to meet, either in business or in life, supply, so on and so forth. So within you exists solutions, exists the, let's say, solutions to problems. And you have to look and more or less pay attention, take a step back and say, what is going on in the landscape and what can I add to this? This is the time to amplify your signal. So as a man, as the lighthouse has a light that attracts boats that sail into the shore or the harbor. So during this time, there are people within your family, there are people within your community that are on the seas of uncertainty. So your leadership, your awareness, your presence are not only appreciated, but needed more than ever. So even if you don't have the business idea, if you simply amplify your presence, that can be making a phone call, that could be making a Skype or a Zoom call, that could be delivering food to the homeless, that could be making sure that your elderly neighbors have groceries. These are all problem-solving elements. Now, you can apply this to business, but what society needs and what your community needs is for you to keep your head on a swivel, to be alert and aware, and to amplify the humanity, the presence, and the signal so that you maintain the light that ships sail to for stability, and also so that you can be the island instead of rocking in the seas of uncertainty.
Yeah, it's a great metaphor. And something that I've noticed too, Shadeed, on the flip side is I don't know how long it was into this, or even I actually don't even know how long we're in this now. I mean, 3-4 weeks now, we're in this, kind of shelter in place type of a recommendation. And I think just a couple of weeks in, I started reading these reports of all of these new initiations of divorce, because, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this as well. But, I think that what's happening there is, yes, we have an opportunity during these times of uncertainty and anxiety to really step up and show our mettle as leaders and men. But on the flip side, I also think that during these times, the men who don't answer that call, I think are in for a very rude awakening. What are your thoughts on that?
During times of uncertainty, the truth is amplified. And what we find with the divorce rate and how divorce rates are skyrocketing across countries and cultures is the role that work plays as a placebo, or let's say a factor in hiding from that what we need to address. It is very easy to wake up next to your partner, next to your spouse, and she gets up and she goes to work. You get up, you go to work, and you can use work as a crutch for what needs to be fixed. So when that factor is taken out the picture and everyone is at home, that routine of avoidance is now replaced by we have to deal with each other. And the lack of communication, the lack of direct awareness of this is the problem, this is the root issue, how can I fix it, is often met with going to your corner of the house, getting lost in television, video games, and just lack of avoidance of what needs to be dealt with. So the solution to this is to look at this as an opportunity to dive deeper into interaction. If we allow screens to parent our children and to nurture our relationships, what happens is when that's amplified, it diminishes that human contact that's needed to keep a relationship thriving.
Absolutely. I want to use that as a segue to talk about leadership. You know, we talked a little bit before we got on here with the recording about you were discussing the necessity. I'll call it the necessity of communication. You're talking about, you know, when you wake up in the morning, having that group discussion, making sure everybody is on the same page. And I think that is so crucial for any leader of any team to make sure that there is clear communication, expectations are set at all times, and so there's not a misalignment of expectations. So what strategies do you use, Shadeed, in terms of leadership, not just leading yourself, but how do you take the things that are working for you and then apply that to those who are underneath your leadership?
Great question. Now, one of the biggest challenges that I've had to make in my personal life, and I'm a person who is always looked to for the answers for almost 2 decades now. Everyone comes to me for the answer, the way forward, the solution. And in my own life, what I had to figure out was my personal accomplishments and achievements are secondary to the goal of the household. My personal abilities, talents are, let's say, not as important as what I'm able to inspire within the people that love me and I'm trusted to lead. So if I, for example, one of my biggest sources of pride is that my lady and I are now waking up each day with the focus of running our miles, getting our miles in each day. We have a weekly goal that we set. And again, it doesn't matter if every time she goes to run, she averages 3 miles a run. It doesn't matter if I've completed 6 full marathons. If together we aren't able to grow as a unit during these times, then my 6 marathons, they don't mean much because it's not inspiring the path forward. So when we talk about, let's say, my personal strategies, I'll give you some non-negotiables in my household. Every day, it is a must that, now keep in mind that my plate in terms of entrepreneurial work is busier than ever. I'm actually working more hours, but I set a goal. I set a standard that every day I will get 8 hours of sleep. So I will not let work overshadow the household. 8 hours of sleep. I won't be up all times of the night. Some nights are necessary, but 8 hours of sleep each night. Every day we pray over all of our meals. So each day we give thanks, we give gratitude for the meal that we are to receive. Just before this broadcast, I saw a news story of thousands of people in states around the country waiting in line for food banks. That is not our situation. So you must give thanks. You must keep the spirit of gratitude alive. No matter what's going on in my day, I make sure that at least 2 of our major meals we eat together. So we sit down, we fellowship, we discuss, we talk about the day. It's not all about gloom and doom, but we connect instead of one person in the screen and another person in front of another screen or a television. I make sure that we eat together. And next is I make sure that we have some form of fitness in our household. So for me, as it ties into the question, I started doing my own workouts. I'm very active with workouts, martial arts, running, so on and so forth. So I started doing workouts within the upper deck of a local parking garage. It's totally isolated. I figured if I just park my car here, break out my workout gear, this would be a great workout, load it back up, all set. So in setting that standard for myself, I communicated it to my partner. And the consistency that she saw, it set a standard that once I started to invite her and she saw that, oh, wait a minute, this is a serious workout. Then as my lady, she amplified that vision that I set forward. And now those workouts come with an amazing meal afterwards. And there's different routes that she's suggesting based on her knowledge of the area. And so by setting the example of, I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to make sure I get the dogs outside. I'm going to make sure that I give her enough time. She's not necessarily, let's say, the morning person. Make sure she has enough time to have a roll and start to wake up. Once she's up, ready to rock and roll, what that does is it allows for both of us to play our roles, and we grow together as opposed to allowing a circumstance to dictate a standard.
And there's so much to unpack there, Shadeed. That's a great routine. You guys who just listened to that, you probably want to rewind that, have a pen in your hand, because what Shadeed just talked about, a lot of great applicable actions you can be taking from that list. I wrote down several notes as you were going through that I'd like to kind of expand on here. And one, I get this. You talk about giving thanks, before each meal, and gratitude. I have found is something that is often hard, especially in today's culture. It's hard to give. It's hard to think about. We are so obsessed at times about all the things that we don't have that we struggle to see the multitude of blessings that are often right in front of our faces. And what I have found, actually just recently, my prayer life had struggled and waned quite a bit over the last, I would say, year or so. And over the last maybe 4 to 6 weeks, I've really found myself recommitting to prayer a few times a day. And most of the time, at least in the mornings, I try to make that prayer mainly gratitude, showing appreciation to God. And I've noticed that starting my day with a sense of gratitude, and even as I'm sure you do as you pray over meals, just that regular reminder of the things that you're grateful for, I find has a significant impact on just my mood, my outlook, my willingness to be charitable to others. Do you find that as well, Shadeed?
Absolutely. And I find, well, for human beings, it's impossible to have, let's say, competing emotions. You cannot have the spirit of lack and limitation and have the spirit of gratitude occupy the same vacuum or space. So if you're in a rut, if you're in a place where you can't create, you can't innovate, you can't feel like you can't move forward, what I found, and I learned this in the darkest times of my life, is that I would take a sheet of paper and write down what I'm thankful for. And it can be just, I'm thankful that I have the vision to be able to see this. I can breathe at this time. And sometimes you just have to go back to the basics and hit the reset and say, okay, I have the gift of life today. And gratitude is like a muscle. And once you start to strengthen that, what happens is it helps to develop and sharpen your overall resolve, so that when life throws you a curveball or a complete setback, you're able to reframe and say, well, I'm still in the game. This is a setback. It did knock me back a few steps, but I still have the legs to keep walking forward. So let me regroup and get my ducks in a row and move things forward. For a household, where gratitude really comes into play is when you're in a situation, as we're all in during the time of this recording, where tempers flare and the smallest argument can go into days of possibly not speaking, or secrets come up, or things that needed to be addressed are now forced to address. Gratitude helps you realize that we've been through a lot. We have the gift of experiences and time and a union, and that what we've built is stronger than that what we're facing. But if you can't get your partner in the spirit of gratitude, then one person will be thinking lack and limitation, and your positivity may not balance that. So you have to get your household, again, if you can do 25 pull-ups for 4 sets, that's wonderful. But who is following your example? What leadership, what followers are you building through your leadership? And gratitude is a powerful way to get everyone on the same page, so that the other personal development and family development can take place.
Yeah, we often hear, men in the self-improvement sphere of Twitter talk about the necessity of having an abundant mindset. And I do think that oftentimes what this is lost, and is that being grateful is an abundance mindset. Being grateful for the things you have helps you to focus on all that you have, all the things that you have, not just that you are hoarding for yourself, but that you have available that is on your plate to give to others as well. And being grateful just reminds you of those blessings. I remember a few times in my life, I readily will admit that I have shortcomings in this regard, but a few times in my life where I think had the right mindset. I've had in my old home, we had a huge plumbing problem. Pipes burst inside of our wall, and thousands of dollars worth of repairs that had to be done. And this was, I don't even know, maybe 5-6 years ago. And I had recently gotten a raise at work, and this happened, and I thanked God for that. And I know that sounds really odd. It's like, well, why would I thank God for that? Well, I thanked him because it happened at a time where it wasn't that big of a hit to our finances because I was going to be able to pay for this. Whereas had it happened 2 months earlier, it would have been a problem. I remember a time where I was driving on the road and my car broke down, and I was about an hour away from home, and it happened. And I attribute this to be almost a supernatural thing because I don't think it's a natural thing for men to thank God when things go wrong. But I thanked God. And the reason I could do that is because I had a very strong prayer life at that time in my life, and there was a lot of gratitude flowing from my spirit. And when I saw that happen and I was experiencing that, I was still able to have the mindset of, you know what, this is a very small thing in the grand scheme of all that my life entails. And so that abundance mindset and gratitude absolutely go hand in hand. And I think a lot of men miss that.
It's not often macho. It's not often cool to pay homage or give thanks. And I find that it's the seat or the center of strength to be able to say, this is where my power comes from, or to say, I'm not the source of this power. And so prayer, and for those who are listening to this, and let's say you haven't been to church in years, or the words God or prayer bring up, let's say, a negative connotation, it's tapping into the greater source. If you get into the spirit of understanding that everything that happens in life happens for you and not to you, then you will avoid a lot of the victim mentality that you see online, as well as in your day-to-day life when it comes to uncertain times like this. One of the keys to leadership is to be able to follow. You will never be as effective of a leader until you have submitted to rules and guidelines that teach you how to discipline yourself within a system that is not your own. And once you're able to master that system, then you can create your own system for people to buy into. So it's very important that you're able to look outside of yourself and to understand the grand scheme of things, the bigger picture, and submit to the fact that you are not the, let's say, the conductor of it all.
Very well spoken. Now, on the topic of, I think that the topic of men maybe not always recognizing the things that are in front of them, or maybe misinterpreting them. I see this notion that is, I wouldn't say it's prevalent, but it certainly exists, and it's more prevalent than I think it should be, that a man who has a woman in his life, that woman can only be a detriment to his pursuits or his mission as a man. And I know because of conversations we've had before, and even earlier today, that you agree with me on this, and that a man who has, I won't say any woman, but a man who has the right woman that he is journeying through life with and is by his side and supporting what he's doing. I consider my wife and my children as well. I'll throw them in there because I think this is also something that you hear. Well, you have 3 kids, so that's a hindrance to your life or hindrance to your pursuits as a man. And I disagree. I would say that my wife and my children, they motivate me to ascend to heights that I probably wouldn't be motivated to otherwise. Not to say that I'm not a motivated man. I certainly am, but I have lives that are dependent upon my leadership. They're dependent upon my ability to provide and protect. Can you talk a little bit about the role that a woman plays in a masculine man's pursuit of his mission, and also the opportunities that may present to him that he wouldn't otherwise have.
Oh my goodness. This is not just a great topic. This is the topic. In your quest to be a leader, in your quest to be great, in your quest to be remembered, as a man, it's very important to understand that first, you do need your, if you think about life like a glove or a hand, you need your pillars. And so, of course, your mission, your vision, your understanding of communication and physicality are four fingers of the glove. But that fifth finger, the thumb thing that separates us from a lot of the wildlife out there, is a great woman. And the beauty of women, and I believe that women are the greatest natural resource that is available and accessible to a man who has his ducks in a row. And the reason why this is that women are the life flows through them. Life flows through them. And what happens is, as a man, your vision is a seed. And when you plant that seed through your communications and your actions, women have a gift. They have the ability to take that seed and nurture that seed and multiply that vision into that which is greater. So to give you a few examples, if you give a woman your apartment and she comes over and she visits, she can make it into a home. It's just something that's more nurturing, something that's more inviting. If you give a woman groceries, she can transform it into a meal in a general sense. And if you are on the verge of success, but you lack, let's say, the discipline or the patience or the tolerance or the nurturing that is sometimes needed in certain situations as a leader, she will point out your flaws. She will point out the areas where you can do better. And ultimately, through her belief in you and her nurturing of you, cleaning you up a bit, she will help you go from where you are to where you're destined to be. It's no secret that the majority of millionaires in the United States are married. And it's not, 40 or 50 or 60%, but the numbers go into 70s and 80s. So marriage in itself, and it creates, and not just marriage, but the spirit of a union that's bonded by some form of commitment, it has so many wealth generating principles that it's, for a man especially, does not reach his greatest success until his 40s and 50s. The numbers show it throughout time, because he's able to slow down and tap into one woman and invest fully, and she can invest in him. And that numbers show it is where the greatest success comes. For the gentlemen who are younger and you're listening to this and you say, well, I need to play the field. I need to get out here and sow my wild oats. I'm not ready to settle down. Just know that in life, when you are on the path to greatness and you're able to harness your thoughts, gain discipline, and build yourself to where you want to be, the right lady, when you communicate your vision, she will come, not just in a romantic setting, but often in companies as well. It's the work of great women within many companies that, again, you bring your vision to the table. This is where I want to see things go. And they're able to see where you're going to be 5 years from now and help you, empower you, encourage you to reach that plateau.
Yeah, I think one of the greatest insidious lies that is being told within our society today is that there are no differences between men and women. And that stems from a multifaceted philosophy or set of philosophies, if you will. But at the end of the day, what we're losing track of by anybody who buys into that is the complementary nature of men and women. It absolutely exists, and any man who has spent time around a woman, you very well laid that out, Shadeed, by talking about how women are they're multipliers, they're nurturers, and men, we not that we can't do those things, but predominantly we are problem solvers. We're bulldozers, right? We see something that needs fixed, and we will relentlessly attack finding ways to fix it. But while we're focused here, there's dangers over here and over here on our sides that we're not seeing, that a woman will often see. My wife oftentimes, and sometimes it annoys the piss out of me, man, because I'm just, I'm like, you're always pointing out the negative things, but that's really not what she's doing. She's mitigating risk. And as somebody who's been in project management, I understand the value of that. But because I'm a man, I don't always take the time to evaluate those risks. I'm so focused on solution that the dangers of going down the path that I'm going, even if it's the right path, there's still some things that need to be mitigated as we go down those paths and implement solutions. And women are very good at pointing those things out and saving us a lot of trouble. Yes, they can provide some additional headache and trouble along the way. It's not that that doesn't exist. And I'm sure I provide plenty of headache and annoyance to my wife at times as well, right? That's just part of having a relationship. So yeah, very well said on the benefits of a man having a good woman by his side and how that plays out. Now, on the other hand, I know you and I agree on this. It's important that a man has other men in his life that he can learn from, that can help drive him to greater heights as well. So what are your thoughts on that, Shadeed? How men need other men in order to fully unleash their potential?
I believe in the concept or the analogy of a flock of eagles. Now, going back to National Geographic, eagles often fly solo. And so the concept of a flock of eagles does not necessarily mesh with the animal kingdom, but I'll share with you what I mean. When you have a kingdom that you're building, no matter if you are a janitor or you are, let's say, an entrepreneur, or you are, let's say, whatever your electrician, each man is building his own kingdom according to what he believes and what he is willing to work for and accept. And so there's certain, let's say, challenges. There's certain vulnerabilities to every kingdom. There's certain security defects that are in every kingdom. And you need to be able to seek counsel. In every movie where there's an important king, or you can go into movies like The Godfather, there's always the counsel, the wise counsel by the side. And what we often miss out on, especially in our younger lives, is the importance of mentorship as well as masterminds. If you go into Think and Grow Rich, for example, Napoleon Hill, way back in the early 1900s, outlined the benefits of a mastermind group. If you want to go in a biblical sense, Jesus had his 12 disciples by his side. That's the original mastermind group. So when you talk about, let's say, the path to greatness, you need people around you who, if you're on an escalator, there's going to be people that are ahead of you. And the way an escalator works is it's always moving forward. It's always moving upward or going back down. And you may never catch up to those people, but the fact that you see people ahead of you and you can also look back and see people behind you, what that allows you to do is expand your worldview, understand that there's a bigger game to be played. There's learning from other people's mistakes versus making your own through trial and error, and ultimately shortening the learning curve of anything that you want to be, do, and have. And by getting around and in the company of other men, you can strengthen yourself by discussing the challenges that you face. And it's important to realize that your relationship, your lady may say, you should discuss your problems with me, but you also have to understand that she's under your umbrella. So whatever is raining down from you is going to cascade down on her. So if you're able to clear your mind through discussions, through getting away, through camaraderie, it helps you to become stronger, because ultimately only a man can teach you what it is to be a man. And someone who may be older, more experienced, has survived certain ups and downs, you can take that knowledge, you can take that insight and become stronger. And so when life beats you down, we all need someone to talk to, no matter how strong, macho, confident, stoic you may be. You need someone, you need that outlet, so that when you come home to manage your household, every single up and down you will be the island that your family can be dependent on, instead of you becoming the waves and get swept away in the current because it's too overwhelming for you to face.
Yeah, I know, you and I, I'm the co-creator of Fraternity of Excellence. You're inside of that group as well. And I see that very often inside of FOE, where, men are struggling with some things and they keep that in its proper lane. And I think another great metaphor there, whatever you're raining down, right? That is going to affect those who you're raining it down on. And you see this concept of leadership, that we have to be that rock, that island. And what oftentimes I see it, I was going to say I think, but I know. I mean, I see men who they come home and they just dump on their wives. They complain about the problems at work or how they got passed up for that promotion. And that's not the place for that. Your wife does not want you coming home and whining and complaining. Now, there doesn't mean you can't express your disappointments. But if all you're doing is complaining and you're not coming with any solutions and you're not explaining about what you're going to do, things that you learned and how you're going to take action from that learning, you're not doing yourself any favors, and you're not doing her life any favors as well. And you said it very well, Shadeed. You're having other men where you can come to with these issues. You're not whining and complaining to them either. You're explaining your situation. You're getting advice from solution-minded men who honestly have your best interest in mind. And I can think of very few things more valuable than that.
Within the fraternity itself, Fraternity of Excellence, for those of you who are new to the community, it's a very uncommon outlet for many men, because in their individual lives, they have no one that they've, let's say, established a relationship to grow with. So maybe they have a distant relationship with their fathers. Maybe they have an adversarial relationship with their brothers. Maybe their coworkers, they don't feel comfortable discussing life topics with them. So they go through this life of quiet desperation, and oftentimes working way too hard and going through failure after failure after failure by simply not having access to someone who has tried and failed and tried and succeeded. And I find that within the fraternity itself, when men get into the habit of, okay, I actually have a place now where I can speak my mind, I can speak my piece, and it won't be used against me. It won't be a screenshot on social media. It won't be recorded in some way. Then you find that those men kind of repair their relationship with, let's say, opening up to others and actually asserting themselves. And it has a very powerful impact on other areas of their life.
Yeah, when we talk about that, Shadeed, men being able to open up and share parts of themselves, their struggles, their failures that they might not feel comfortable sharing in other mediums. The word that comes to mind when I think about that is humility. I think that men today, I've had this struggle. Men today struggle with humility, knowing when to let their guard down and be vulnerable, and when that's appropriate and when it's not, because there are times where that's not appropriate, and there are times when it absolutely is appropriate and necessary. How important is humility for a man who's looking to be the best version of himself possible?
The most dangerous men that I've ever encountered through martial arts and professional fighting and all these different avenues are oftentimes the most even-tempered and humble, in that when you have a clear understanding of who you are, what your limits are, and what you've come to do in this life, it gives you a sense of understanding of all that is around you. And all being humble is, because there's different terms such as humble brag and people who, give charity and while recording a homeless person and posting it for, I'm doing a great thing, but look at me. And so there's many different skewed definitions of it. And all humility is, for the lack of a common definition, is being aware that there is a bigger picture and a bigger, let's say, hand at play. So when you encounter people, if every person I look at, for example, is superior to me in some way, but I don't know what that way is until I get to know them, then I can only approach that individual with respect, because they have some experience that they've been through that is greater than mine, or let's say has a more of a depth than my own experience. So whenever I approach someone, I'm always wondering, what can this person teach me? So if I'm in a position where I'm looking to learn, then there's no way that I'm looking to supersede them or assert dominance over them, because if I just sit back and I listen long enough, the golden nugget of information, experience, resources, connections, introductions will come my way. Now, humility can be tough when, as a leader or as a business owner, you create something that takes you to another tax bracket, or helps you exceed your goals, or helps you to provide for your family in ways that you've never dreamed of. And so what you have to remember is, when you arrive to those positions, and in my case, in my business, when I first started, I had a gentleman, he made $11 million that year. And I told him my idea, I told him my vision, and he laughed. I was in his office. He laughed and said, get ready, because you're going to succeed much faster than your little plan, what you think is going to be. And he was right. And so what I had to learn in that experience was that I had to dial back and remember why I started. And for you, you may go through that phase where you're able to buy what you want. You're able to do all the things you want to do, whether it's travel, dating, the finest, fanciest experiences. But you must remember why you started. You must remember that people are the bridge to all opportunities, and everyone you meet is a teacher to you in some way, even if it's what not to do in life. If you take a step back and realize that we're all here, we all have a purpose, that will allow you to remain humble, even in the greatest of success and circumstances.
I think it's impossible to learn from somebody or anybody that you have relationships with or that you come across in life if you don't have some element of humility. And I know I've been stubborn at times in life, man. When I was brand new, I don't even know, 2006, 7, whenever I started kind of doing some dabbling in online business. And I remember my first couple of products, I had some people just lay into me about how bad they were, not from a content perspective, but appearance. I had a limited budget, so I wasn't paying anybody to do my ebook designs and things like that. And I'm like, whatever. You don't know what you're talking about. I think it looks fine. And come 3 years later, where my graphic design abilities had come along a little more, and I started learning more about that and creating new products or upgrading the design of existing products. And they were right. And I guarantee you I lost out on hundreds or thousands of dollars because I was unwilling to listen to what those people were saying. Now, granted, most of them weren't very, we'll say, gracious with their words when they were giving me this feedback. And so that turned me off to what they were saying a little bit. But had I been able to sift out the value of what they were saying, I would have saved myself some lost time, some opportunity lost and on down the line. And we've talked about the value that having the right people in our lives can have for us, whether that's our children, our wives, having the right men in our corner. I want to play devil's advocate here and talk a little bit about, because I think this is a big struggle for a lot of guys who are going to be listening to this, is how do you deal with the people in your life that aren't that positive influence, the ones who maybe they're family members or longtime friends who you're an entrepreneur or you're a leader in the place of business and you have these aspirations and ambitions that far exceed what this group over here that are in your circle of friends or family have, and they try to bring you down. I mean, how do you deal with those people, Shadeed?
This is going to be a lengthy answer, but this will be the most important segment of this discussion. As a man who was raised in a family business, meaning it's the first example that I've known about, let's say, how the world works. I, as a man who was raised in entrepreneurship, am a current entrepreneur and business partners with family members, have worked for my mom has worked for me, worked with grandma, grandpa, you name it. I'm here to tell you that not every family member of mine goes crazy when I release a new book, a new course. They don't all buy it. And so the question is why? If we were all raised this way, why is the consensus not, to just support me when I have this long track record, I've been around for a long time, but yet within the family, support is not unanimous. And what you have to understand is that when it comes to family support and the types of friends that exist, your biggest heartbreak in life falls under not understanding the types of friends that exist. What you got to understand, especially from a family standpoint, is that your family, you're competing with the ghost of your former self. So if your family, let's take your mom, for example, maybe mom's a bit negative. Maybe you have an uncle that just seems to point certain things out when you're starting to get sales on your ebook. And here's what you have to realize is that you've been a shell of yourself for far longer than you've been the new entrepreneur. So when you didn't have the car, when you wrecked grandma's station wagon, when you got arrested for stealing candy, when you were the directionless high school senior, when you first got the job at the supermarket and you lost the job, when you had the 4 or 5 years where you were just without a path, and then finally you stumbled upon how to make a few dollars with Gumroad sales and your ebook. Your family has seen this pattern throughout life. So if you have anywhere from 10 to, in some cases, 25 years of inconsistent behavior, and then for 1 or 2 years, you have turned over a new leaf, what you have to realize is that the ghost of who you were is in the background. It's the shadow that is cast upon what you are today. So if you are an acorn next to a tree, then the acorn is saying, why don't you respect me? Well, the tree has been growing for all of your life. And that's one thing you have to understand. Now, when it comes to friends, not all friends are friends the way that you've been taught. You see, in the school system, we haven't been taught about personal relationships, how to make friends, how to be valuable, so on and so forth. So I'm going to give you a basic framework on what types of friends exist in the world. So first things first are our friendships of affiliation. So these are the friends that when your neighborhood, for example, where you grew up, let's say your high school. So this means that the kids that you rode the school bus with, and so you could not avoid them. They were there. You're there together. Can't avoid it. And when you run into them later in life, all they can point out is the good old days. Remember when, Miss Sally made the apple pies and we had the lemonade stand? Those friendships don't evolve past that moment in time. So moment in time friendships. Next are your friendships of, let's say, event-driven or experience-driven friendships. The friends you play football with, you ran track with, the friends that you were in the military with, your coworkers at a specific job. So during those moments of great experiences, whether triumph, failures, ups and downs, you bonded in those situations in order to survive. So I have friends from the military that will always be my friends from the military. However, the conversations that tend to happen, they always go back to that moment in time, that bonded. Do you remember how much it sucked to be out to sea? And, we were on a 6-month deployment, but if you talk to them about the new ebook, oh, that's great. But remember when? So that's the second group of friends. And next are the three stooges, or let's say Laverne and Shirley, or Bert and Ernie friendships, Beavis and Butthead. And these are friends that no matter where you go in life, they form a complementary, they're a puzzle piece to whatever you're doing in life. So no matter what is going on, they will play some part, some role. Hey, I'm going to start this up. Okay, I'll do your website. Or hey, I have a role in this movie. Hey, I'll be an extra. So no matter what you do in life, they will play some part, some role. The problem that you run into when it comes to support is, number one, you expect your family to support you for what you do when they know you for who you are. It takes time for what you do to develop a track record to supersede who you are. That's number one. And
That's
number
awesome,
two,
man. I love that. Yeah, I mean, what you're doing is, it's going to take time. This is who they perceive you to be over here, right? And it's going to take some time before you mentioned a tree and an acorn, right? Take some time for that acorn to fall off that tree, germinate, be nourished, get that rainfall and sunlight, and grow up to be a new tree that grows beyond that first one, man. It's that's a very deep insight, man. I hadn't heard it put that way before, but absolutely right. Because what happens? What happens if that doesn't ever supersede that former, like you said, shell of yourself or the ghost of your past? All you can do then is lift the expectations of others that are based on who you were, and you're trying to become somebody better. And that is an enemy of progress, man. So sorry to interrupt you, Shadeed, man. I had to elaborate on that because I love that point.
yes, it's and to close out this point, the biggest challenge that you face when it comes to building friendships and the reciprocal nature of friendships when it comes to innovation and creating new ideas is you expect a moment in time to be this complementary puzzle piece throughout your life. Friendships in 2 out of 3 scenarios have expiration dates, or they are people who need to be loved for a moment in time or at a distance. And with certain people, they're not everyone can take the journey. Not everyone is built to be a complementary piece. And we tend to think of friendships as forever, no expiration date. And the truth of the matter is, if you remove both of you from the place where the friendship started, or the experience that forged the friendship, then you essentially have nothing in common. And if you want a very clear example of or case study of how you can find out who your true friends are, all you have to do is stop drinking or go on a diet or move across town, and you'll find that your entire peer group, in most cases, will change.
I have gone through that exact experience, Shadeed. You are exactly right. Yeah, as soon as you stop engaging in because exactly like you said, where it's the Navy, or for me, my fraternity in college, and when I get together with my old fraternity brothers, all we talk about, oh, you remember how much I drank that one night? Or do you remember, this girl that used to sleep around with all the guys? And, you talk about all these things. And, after the conversation flows beyond what happened 20 years ago, it just gets very quiet and awkward, and you don't have much to talk about. And, same thing with activities. If you are engaged in these behaviors, even destructive ones, whether people, whether it's, drugs, alcohol, video games, which not the video games are always destructive, but a lot of men do use them in a way that is destructive. As soon as you stop engaging in those activities, where is your relationship then, right? It's almost like you're just convenient company mates, for the things that the things or one particular thing that you enjoy doing together. So Shadeed, man, this was a great conversation. We're up on time here, but I really appreciate you coming on, man. A lot of great insights that you provided today. I would like to give you an opportunity here before we close. Let our listeners know some final parting shots of wisdom that you might have for them, where they can go to connect with you and learn more about your philosophies on entrepreneurship as a man.
In closing, this has been a great conversation on leadership and its role in uncertain times. Be the island, not the waves. Within your household, you are the lighthouse. So what light are you amplifying? And are the boats in your house sailing in a direction that you're pleased with? If you are disciplined in fitness, or you're disciplined in getting things done, that's one piece of the puzzle. What you have to look at during these times is amplifying your example so that everyone is moving in the direction that you see fit for your family, for your immediate family. If you don't, let's say, have a household of your own, and your community at large. It is time to amplify your signal as a whole, amplify your humanity, and step things up for your community, not just your house or the house next to you. Think about the elderly, think about the children, think about what can be done for those who are less fortunate, and use your knowledge, skills, and abilities to start to make that happen. If you want to learn more about my mission to empower broken and lost communities through the power of ownership, accountability, through the vehicle of entrepreneurship, I can be reached at mrshadeed.com. That is spelled MRSHA, D like David, EED like David.com. And from there, you can join my email list and be kept up to date on my philanthropic efforts to rebuild communities around the world. And make sure you tune into the fraternityofexcellence.com. And that was the catalyst that led to this discussion, and great community that everyone has a son, grandpa, uncle, nephew, and who needs some guidance and needs a community of accountable men that can keep them going along that path. I encourage you to look deeper into the fraternity. If you have any questions for me, then you can reach out to my website and take things from there. But overall, just thank you for the opportunity to discuss masculinity during these times. I think it's very important for men to understand that in a world where masculinity sometimes has been questioned, challenged, or in many cases seems like a bad word, that good men who are functional and valuable and understand their purpose are in greater need and value than ever before.
There were some excellent parting words, Shadeed. I am grateful for you, man. Thank you for throwing out the FOE suggestion there. I do appreciate that. And you guys definitely want to check out Shadeed's work at MrShadeed.com. As he mentioned, as you can tell, he has a lot of wisdom, a lot of insights, and I know that we have just barely scratched the surface on the value that he has to give. So definitely make sure you guys check that out. Shadeed, thank you so much for coming on, man. This was an excellent discussion, and those who listen are going to get a lot of value out of this. I do appreciate you taking time out of your day to bless our audience with what you have to give, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. I want to once again thank Shadeed for coming on the podcast today. That was an absolutely excellent discussion. I am so grateful that he took time out of his day to share the value that he has to give on this topic of being a man, being a masculine entrepreneur, and especially what it is to double down on our masculine nature during times of anxiety, times of uncertainty, and times of trouble. Make sure that you check out Shadeed's website, as he mentioned there at the end of our podcast, by going to MrShadeed.com. Finally, as Shadeed mentioned, he is a brother in the Fraternity of Excellence, and this type of discussion that Shadeed and I just had is the kind of discussions that happen all the time inside of our brotherhood, the Fraternity of Excellence. We are a group of brothers who are committed to sharing what it is to be a man, sharing our struggles, sharing our successes, giving the value that we have to give to one another, learning what it is to be a man from one another. You cannot learn how to be a man from women. You are not going to learn what it is to be a man inside most churches today. You will not learn what it is to be a man in the public school system. It requires being around other men who are driven, who are ambitious, who are taking action to unleash their potential on the world, learning tough lessons and being willing to pass those lessons along to the men who are inside of their tribe. And that is what the Fraternity of Excellence is about. If you're interested in checking out what we're doing there, go to fraternityofexcellence.com. That's fraternityofexcellence.com. All right, brothers, that will do it for the podcast today. I want to thank you again for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider leaving it a 5-star review on iTunes and also giving it a share on social media, sending it in an email to your friends and family members who could stand to hear the positive message of what it is to be a man in a world that is bent on denigrating masculinity at seemingly every turn today. I say it in nearly every podcast episode, and I'm going to say it again. This message will only propagate so far by having me being the sole propagator of this message. I need men like you. I need my followers. I need my supporters to help me get this message out. And I want to thank the many of you who are already doing that. And those of you who have not taken that step yet, please consider doing so by sharing this message on social media, leaving the review on iTunes, sharing it with your friends and family via text message or email. That is the absolute best way that you can give back whatever semblance of value I may be giving you by releasing these podcasts on a regular basis. So that will do it, man. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for leaving those reviews. Until next time, this is Craig James from masculinebydesign.com. I'm out.